discuss the football field first, so I'll start with that. I might take a sheet from there before also filling in any relevant information. Up on the screen is a current plan that we have that takes care of some things or makes some changes to a plan that we already have the permit. In this, the changes are what was in the old plan was a 3-foot setback. This one has a 6-foot setback. It also addresses the columns, which in the old plan there were 38 columns. This new plan has 26, which are now much more evenly spread out throughout the piece of property, where they before were very heavy on Girard and Wyoming. So we took out half of them on those sides and added them in on 2 other sides. So it's much more cohesive. Difference that also this plan then incorporates the tennis courts, so there will be no black fencing, there will be tennis court fencing in front of the tennis court. And also allows for some setback off of the home bleachers. And that's something we can definitely discuss. There is a bit of a lip because of the press box comes out an additional 6 feet. Sorry. Yes. Yeah, right there.
So there's a lot of traffic.
Yes.
I don't know if it helps with what this is
So that fencing comes off. And these are just drawings. So that comes off as a 12-foot setback.
What you mean here?
Yes.
From the
Press
bleachers?
box.
Put a press box here?
Well, it's a little larger there because it's
Right.
a press box.
This actually looks smaller here than here. No?
No.
It's actually larger. Okay.
Yeah. One of the things that
This becomes a 21-foot
Yes,
setback.
21. we discussed,
That's
if
enough to see.
you wanted to just keep it flush, straight, rather than do that. When we met with PLA,
Mike's gonna point out over here because
Okay.
it's easier for them to see that and us to see that.
And you're talking about where setbacks there right by the press box,
yeah,
right? Okay.
yeah. And I'll explain the rationale for putting that there when we discuss if you don't like it or like it. It was, if we kept it as a straight line, the setback then is a continuous 21 feet. Whereas if you do that little diagonal, it keeps it then as a 12-foot. It gets a little fatter towards the end, towards the right side. But it's less of an outward presence on the left side.
Left side towards Gerard, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, and this is the same as the old plan, on the corner of Wyoming and Girard, there's a diagonal.
Appreciate it, sure.
It's not shown on this side, on the, where, Mike, right where you are in that corner, yes. I would like to see that as a diagonal also.
Okay.
We'll set it back a little bit and
To
also
mimic-
mirror that side.
Yep, mimic this side. Okay.
It does allow for some access doors for, most notably behind the concession stand, so that whoever's loading the concession stand doesn't have to walk around the gate to get into the concession stand. They can just load right up to the stairs, but the fence does go behind the concession stand.
And there would also be access doors along this run here that parallels the A field in case balls or anything were to come off this playing surface, the players could go and access the A field and grab them.
And I'll just say how we arrived at this plan as we did. We spent a lot of time looking at the space. We met with the engineers again, with John Yorkie. This sort of seemed to be best plan that worked, didn't change any of our, reasons for having events. And, fit the tennis courts in nicely and, kind of arrives at some sort of compromise. There is still discussion item around the tennis courts.
Well, I was just gonna say, we actually inputted the turf track and courts, the other company that's using, that we've hired, and we've inputted their design in here to fit nicely within the fence. I just wanted to add one.
Yeah, and I think once we finally put the court in the plan, it did change a little bit where the bleacher is in relation to the path.
Correct.
And you'll see that there's an overhang.
This is a new asphalt path that leads off Wyoming Avenue. Currently, the bleacher is blocking the path. So what's gonna be recommended is this bleacher get bumped out over into here and kind of create an entrance way. This would be a 12-foot gate coming off the fence, and this would allow access for emergency vehicles such as an ambulance to access the field during an event, and also provide a pretty an easy grade to get in any kind of construction vehicles that would be necessary. So you would create a gap between the bleachers and have an access route onto the field, if that makes sense.
And that's one of the options. I mean, the other option would be to move the path over a little bit, keeping the visitors' bleachers where they are, which isn't ideal, because they're really on like the 30.
It's not ideal because right in this area here, it's pretty steep grade that slopes down. So we have there's a manhole right in that area,
So
so.
the path can't be moved over.
Correct.
I know we're not allowed to ask any questions, but is that path directly from Monroe? So the emergency vehicles would come down Monroe because they couldn't turn on Wyoming. Do you know what I'm saying?
Unless you're gonna have no parking on Wyoming.
Aren't they usually parked in the parking lot?
Who?
It changed, and that was part of the discussion about where the emergency vehicles would be placed, because I think some of those changes. So we have to.
Because
make a
that's,
decision.
like, I don't know how they would be able to turn. You know what I'm saying?
So the question is, if I hear you right, is how would an ambulance come down the street and turn in there?
Correct.
And then get out
Exactly. Here
there?
on Monroe,
Correct.
they just come down Monroe
Straight.
and go right there.
What if just another 12-foot gate put in with
I think they're
6
saying
other
with the
ones?
cars in the street, the angles would be too tight
Right.
to turn.
In the past, it hasn't been an issue. They've parked there before.
Yeah, that's the same emergency route as it is now.
Okay.
But
Really?
But
We're
then
lucky
in
because that
case
curve
there's no
is
fence.
rough, and they can easily get over that curve.
We always put two.
Is there going to be any markings that
Oh, you do?
during games, like, do not park here for
Well, the-
emergency vehicles?
John
Is
just
that-
said they do put
There's
cones.
2 cones that get put at the end of that current path that's there.
The one we're talking about
Yes.
now?
Right.
Okay.
That's standard setup for the event over there, for football at least.
Theoretically, the ambulance would just sit there.
But that's how they have,
They
some
pull up
have,
on
it
purpose.
depends on the driver who's working the event for Western Burns, I guess.
And then you're saying
With
that,
the ambulance.
you're saying that somebody, there's an ambulance that sits there
No,
now?
I was saying, isn't that where the ambulance would sit during the game?
That's where they sit now.
Yeah.
Oh, that is where they sit.
That's where they sit now. They pull up, Wyoming has a low curb, so it's easy for them to hop over the curb and pull onto the grass, and that's where they sit currently. So we wanted to make sure we could still accommodate that by making sure there was a 12-foot gate there.
Is that also, I'm sorry, a
No,
gate
no,
for
that's-
general
we're here for
admission, or is
discussion.
that a gate just for
That's something,
emergency?
that's something we still need to talk to. We have a lot of gates, so that's something we need to talk to athletics about and see how they
When the
work.
admission points would be?
Yeah.
Are there any places around here that will be marked off, no parking during game day for any reason?
That hasn't been discussed.
I think that's an interesting idea. I mean, and not just having one entrance, but having
Um,
several to disperse athletes pretty much.
Well, there's already a parking issue at games, so now we're talking about having a lot of no parking areas. We could have some neighborhood issues, just throwing it out there.
Well, I mean, John said that, he said he put cones by
There's
that entrance?
two cones that go there
There's two cones that
currently.
eliminate parking by the pass so the,
To allow-
ambulances can turn in there.
I mean, would there be any additional cones throughout with this project that are not put up now, which means with the no parking there is increase under this, or would
Not
they be
that I
set?
see.
We wouldn't need to.
They'd be the same cones be putting up, the
Yeah.
parking wouldn't be any different with this than it is normal?
No, the only exception would be a couple additional handicap spots we add in our lower parking lot, but nothing on the public street.
Okay.
So there's no change on the street?
No change in the street.
Even where the other gates are now, even where you said there's gonna be several gates, somebody just said that. So there's no parking issues at all those other gates?
Correct.
Yeah, you can still park there. It's just, I guess, coming off the sidewalk, you can go in, but it doesn't really affect where you can park your car.
It's really where those two cones are, so the
Right.
ambulance can get in and
Right.
out if they have to.
And
Just
that's
that one
gonna be an
area.
entry gate,
And
or a
they're-
ticket gate.
Yes.
So back 3 years ago, when the police chief said that this would change up a lot of parking, you're saying that that's not gonna do that, this whole structure?
Or would it?
Why would it?
Yeah,
Because of all the gates, he said that there wouldn't be parking at
Most
the
of those,
gates.
but it's gonna be the same entry gates, they're extra gates, they're emergency gates, they're not gonna be open during the gate. The gates for entry are the gate on Girard, it's a gate now.
Right, and there was always parking there, so there's not gonna be now,
No,
right?
that will be no change.
Okay.
The
This
gate
is-
by the parking lot,
by the parking lot.
no concession,
Yep.
the gate on Wyoming.
There's here,
All those additional gates are maintenance gates and emergency gates.
correct. They're
They will be
gonna,
locked.
well, during games, they'll be, yeah.
But they're
They're
not
just gonna be
entry
man gates like we
gates.
have now in the blue fence. They're just gonna be places for people to come in. They're not, we're not gonna be driving vehicles in and out of them.
Except for the one that you spoke of.
Except for
That's
this
the
one right
one.
here on Wyoming.
Okay.
Correct.
What about down here, you wouldn't drive a vehicle through this one that's kind of currently set up for vehicles driving?
Are you
through?
talking about down
Next
here
to
by the field house?
Field house, yeah, that area.
Can't.
You
Yeah.
can't, cause this grade that goes down.
Okay.
You can get a Toro or like a Gator vehicle down there, but not a large vehicle.
I've seen some.
Yeah, I have to.
Yeah.
They shouldn't.
This doesn't eliminate the little practice field up here, does it?
Here, no,
Yeah. Like some of the little guys practice there.
nope. That was taken into consideration.
Karen, did that answer your question with the gates?
Well, it just, it doesn't, it totally debunks what the police chief said. So I have no knowledge of what parking rules are with gates, but the police chief said if you're gonna have gates on Girard Avenue, you can't park there.
I think the question is, because now everybody can just walk onto the field from any access point. So wherever you are on the sidewalk, you can just walk into the field. So now, though, if you're gonna only be able to get in on that corner, that just changes the flow of the walkers. That would be the question. That's all.
But there was discussion for multiple entry gates. So there's not just one way to enter into the field.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you,
You're gonna have-
That blue fence is there, you're not supposed to be able to just walk in. I mean,
But-
but they have entry points
Entry
now.
gates. Is that what you're asking to see where the entry gates are?
Well, what gates are gonna be open for the games?
You're gonna have down here by the tennis courts, by the parking lot,
And this is where you pay to get in the
Girard?
admission points, okay?
correct, Girard, and at the corner of Wyoming and Girard. There was discussion that this could be a possible entry gate, but also this is where the teams come in, so it might be best to funnel spectators on the two ends, but that's just enough for discussion, so.
So four.
Four.
How many do you need? That's high.
How many are there currently?
Well, there's, John,
Don't you just have one or two?
How many, what is there?
entry gate, or,
Where you pay to get in?
there's three now, or four?
Four now,
Four.
currently.
So
One by
this
the concession stand, one by the corner of the field house, one along Wyoming, and one, Girard by the bushes at the north end of the field.
We're gonna be putting two on the other, there's one corner of the tennis courts right there where it is,
Correct.
by the concession stand too, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so we're trying to redirect a lot more coming in on that side.
Correct. But you still do have access on the north side of the field.
Just throwing out there also, right now, we're only talking about the football games. But I think in our minds, we're envisioning other times when there's a lot of practices, a lot of different things going on in the field, that like even last night, I mean, you can already start to see on our block how the cars are and how people do U-turns right in the middle of the street to park, how mom was sitting there on the phone, you know, that kind of thing. So I understand what you're saying about the football games because the access points are the same, but it's not, the traffic and the parking is not just bad on the football games. And what we're talking about is that during the week or whatever, people do get to access the field from every vantage point. So we're just wondering about other practices and the cars parked and how that's going to direct the traffic. And I think we even talked about maybe crosswalks. I'm not sure about that. Somewhere along the line that came up.
We had talked about asking the borough to put a stop sign in the corner of Gerard and Wyoming as possibly, which I think
Would help,
we should do.
probably.
It's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that during the day, for light practices, and stuff, all of those gates will be open.
Okay.
The flow. There's a couple really small access gates that are more
Right.
for
Because sometimes the football games don't get as much traffic as the.
Practice, all practice.
Yeah.
Across the,
Like
like,
routines,
yeah.
yeah.
And it's dark at night. It's crazy. To go
Right,
back to one
exactly.
person comment on game day or event day, and I don't know if this is what Karen was trying to say. Even if you're not using a 12-foot gate as an entrance point because you're assuming the ambulance would like come off of Wyoming and Monroe, I think what the police chief was saying ages ago was, if you have those 12-foot access points, it's so that emergency vehicles could, if they had to, come at those points. And therefore, on a game day, and this is a borough issue, I think, we can't do anything about parking, I don't think, on our own. But when you're parking on Gerard for a game day or Wyoming, and that's a possible entrance point if need be, and there's parking there, no vehicle could perpendicularly access off of at least Gerard, where there's massive congestion, and we've seen near misses with kids, which is the pedestrian kid traffic is pretty much a concern.
So in talking with the engineers and with John, it's really the only access point for an ambulance because of the curb height is that side. So those other gates are 12 foot more for a maintenance issue, and I mean, you know, possibly if you need to have repairs or something.
Yeah.
But the emergency gate, and you know, ideally, I would love it to be on this side, but the curbs are too high. So that is really the only access point for emergency vehicles. But having those bigger fences or those bigger gates allows for some maintenance issues that, you know, we get approval.
And you know, this is something I'm thinking about too, because I know we talked about the buses and making sure that the buses are not parking, and so that gets reiterated, every year. But I'm also wondering if we can, I mean, we have the high school parking lot, you know, and it, yes, okay, if we're Fitbit, you get a couple more steps, if you park in the parking lot to walk over. I'm even wondering if we can, through athletics, have Frank almost, we message encourage parking at the high school and walk over, because I agree, that is very congested, and I think I know there was a bus earlier this year, and we got that moved, so I mean, we when it happens, and whether it was a new driver or whatever, we get on that, because I understand the safety concern. But I think as we continue to say buses are not parking on the street, they're in the lots. But I think we can also have the AD contact other ADs, and it's suggested that parking takes place in the high school.
And he's
We can try
committed to
that.
doing that anyway
Yes.
after meeting with him and
Yeah.
discussing. He really doesn't like the access to the field house because there's too many home team, visitor team, the referees, the game officials, coaches, all sort of mingling with spectators, and he felt it was unsafe. So he wants, and he said, it's my responsibility to change that access. So while he's doing that, I should say, he can also encourage the right visiting teams to enter onto Parkside Drive or by the tennis court back there, try to divert the flow over there, at least for those people that you can control.
It's been a super concern that that bus is parked on Wyoming. Girard is bad, but Wyoming is horrible, and we're very concerned as neighbors about the safety of the kids.
Right, and I mean.
Is that a Wyomissing bus or is it a visitor bus?
It's the visitor bus that we put cones out there for the buses. We save spots for the bus.
No, that should have stopped.
Okay.
Because that should have stopped.
I have seen them on now on Parkside Drive.
Yeah,
down
which is
below.
much better.
Down below, and I'll say this, directive was, no buses on Wyoming.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that should not be anywhere, because we have other places.
Right.
Right.
So it's just a matter of communication. Like I said, when that happened earlier, I don't know if it was in the bus driver, that's the
Right.
benefit of the doubt, but when it came to my attention, we got the bus moving.
Okay.
So I think we can message that to other districts.
Who takes on the youth football issues then? Ryan, the parking turn you? Because
You'll be
we're
a traffic
addressing
cop.
5 football games really, but
Turn out that
there's
somebody,
only about
attendees in
12
the
months of the
waiting
year
room.
where issues pop up.
Well, that access.
I'm kidding, Ryan.
Well, there's parking issues for youth sports at the Hills when we have basketball. We get several messages to stop parking illegally when we pick up and drop our kids from the Hills gym. So, I mean, that is just consistent messaging from the district that parents need to obey traffic rules and parking rules and yellow curves. You know, that's the problem, is parents choosing not to do the right thing.
One of our major concerns with this whole structure was that corner of Girard and Wyoming. It's already, people are going too fast, there's several bus stops there. Now, we've got another, and this is why I was opposed to the 5th court, is we've got another distraction with a structure there. Is it off the corner by so many feet, you promised? Yes, but it's still another distraction. I will insist that you please get another stop sign
Yeah.
there.
No, I think there should be one there as well, and I think we can definitely, while we're talking to the borough, request that.
Right.
But it does,
Yes.
I mean, it does get pretty far from you, doesn't it say like 30-some feet?
It's still a distraction, it's still a very dangerous intersection, and there's no reason why we shouldn't
I
be
agree with you,
concerned.
stop sign. I think we all agree.
So just.
And curve
So
cars,
George,
high school
no,
kids park nearly up to the
That
corner
should be a
in the
four-way
morning.
stop.
because
It
they're
should be.
And they don't,
Right.
I mean, there's sometimes even, and there's sometimes even blocked, that's my bus stop corner, so.
Right.
We laugh when high school kids, I mean, we don't laugh, we make calls and say they're pulling up close to the handicap ramp. They're not paying attention to how far away from a corner you answered that question on your driver test. That corner is definitely a traffic concern.
Stop sign really help.
Yeah.
A four-way stop would be amazing, that's not easy to
I mean,
do.
as much, I don't have a lot of juice with the borough, but I mean, I think we could.
I asked, at a borough hall meeting afterwards, to the police chief, I mean, it will require some
It would be a traffic
attendance
study.
that there will probably need to be a traffic study. He agreed that it's it's one of the corners of the borough that they would agree that
But we can formally request a report.
it will, yes, but it requires some going in there too, I think, police and fire maybe.
I think all we can do as a board is we can make a formal request to the borough, put a stop sign there. And frankly, that's all we can do. You know, we can't be warned that we have no authority to put it ourselves on this. But if we make a formal request, I think we can do it. That's what we can do. Sandy, just one more thing, if you don't mind. The one thing that we discussed was bringing the fence in around the perimeter, if you look at the left of the field from
Yes.
my view. And that created a number of issues, both from a use perspective and a construction perspective. Could you go over those real briefly?
Well,
Or-
You know, when we met with the engineers and with the AD and with John and Mike and also turf track and field, that was mentioned, we talked about it. Hugh, the engineer, said right away, he said that would look aesthetically terrible, he didn't like the idea at all. And then Frank said it will take away space for practice. So
And I think the other thing it would do, if you bring it around the field, you're going to be crushing people in that area, the upper left-hand quadrant like of the field, from my view of the field.
Oh,
It's right in there, because you're not gonna be, people be kind of crushed in there doing.
Well, I think also a concern was that we then have the youth football practice, they could use that, they still could use that field on Wyoming, but it would be no fence. It would, there would be no protection for those kids playing and practicing, they'd be outside of the field.
And to your point, you're right, down in here, pedestrians that would be, or spectators that would be going around the field, it would get tight because initially it was discussed to bring the fence right along the edge of the tennis courts out to Gerard.
Right, right, okay.
And created a flow issue kind of on that, on the Parkside Drive side, so.
Okay.
I think we would have lost also practice fields on the Gerard side. Yeah, that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, down here. We would have lost a portion of it, yes.
Thank you.
May I just ask one more question? I hate to be a pain in the neck about this, but now I'm focusing in on your landscaping there, and that concerns me with safety too.
Well,
Okay,
those trees are the existing trees.
Yeah, these are existing.
okay.
Those aren't bushes, those are.
Those are
Yeah,
humongous
we're not-
trees.
Those are those
Yeah.
trees.
We're not
Okay.
doing any landscaping.
I don't think we're doing anything.
There is no landscape.
There's nothing additional to put in there.
Okay,
And I think also having the 6-foot offset from a mowing perspective makes it easier for John to buzz down on. But no, there's no landscaping, those are existing trees, which, while we're talking to the borough about the stop sign, we're also gonna be talking to them about trimming them and cleaning them up so that the tennis courts will be not such a heavy maintenance issue.
So on that, I'm assuming then that entryway where those bushes are now are gone.
Bushes are gone.
And can you just highlight where the other access points are? You went through the 4 entry, but then you said there's access for maintenance or
Oh,
gates.
there's-
Just where are the other gates?
They're not maintenance access, they're more like,
Like 36-inch wide regular gates.
it won't look like a door, but, so this was Frank Ferrandino's suggestion, by putting this, this space in between the home bleachers and the fence for walkway space to get to the, when kids are playing on the A field,
Yeah.
if a ball goes over the fence, they would have to walk all the way to Gerard or Parkside to come up to get the ball. This would be an access gate that they can just.
You got one
The
here.
coaches will have fobs for it, or what, I don't know however we get to determine what we're gonna do in terms of blocking and security. If it's a fob or if it's a lock or whatever, but they'll have access to those.
So how many are, I see one, just one, there's one here,
There's
there's
two.
one.
One
There's
behind
one
the
here
concession stand.
and there's one here.
Right there.
Yep,
Oh, okay.
here and here.
Yeah.
Mainly this, there's football equipment that gets stored back here, so it would be easy for them to move it out and onto the A field and, like Sandy said, to move back and forth between the fields during the practice or.
And this connects to the back of the field house?
Right, yeah,
The fence, I'm sorry.
yep, the fence does, right here,
On the other opposite side.
on the opposite side.
Yes, it looks like, so you get there to the restrooms and then it connects to the back of the.
It actually connects right here. There's a retaining wall here, though, so that you can't get down there. The fence actually connects back here where, we talked about getting supplies in for the concession stand. This is a large drop off here, so there's no fence there.
I counted the total 10 gates around the entire facility. The total 10 gates.
Thank you.
Sandy, just one more question or point. From an access perspective in general, and we may not have thought this through or thought about this, would the access be similar to that of the tennis courts, a dusty dawn situation? Or would we do something different, or we haven't really come to a conclusion on the access issue?
I don't think we can come to a conclusion, but I think that we're thinking that's the one. I think that, I mean,
Maybe something sort of tennis courts, but no real conclusion on
I mean,
that.
I don't think blocking them more than dust
No.
would have been a consideration.
No.
I mean, at the most, it would be, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, understood, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
If the Dust Dons done to keep it consistent with the rest.
That's what I thought, that makes sense.
So I think my issue is this gate behind the home. Or I'm sorry, the row behind the home. I don't know the fence behind the bleachers with that angle.
You want to
I
come
don't mind
out
the
the
angle. I don't mind it. But
Oh, okay.
I don't know. And I think it gets it off of view a little more, 6 feet.
And the purpose is to maximize as much of the field turf as possible, because we're really only bumping this out because of the press box.
Right.
So we have room for storage back there, but yeah, to not lose any usable turf. Field.
That extra space on the right of the press box also allows vehicle access, WEU, if need be for games, anything of that nature.
Oh, do you want to pick up the?
Is there anything else?
I have a question about the fence through the tennis court. So that fence is going all the way through the tennis courts and then coming down this way. So the tennis courts are actually going to be enclosed into the football field fence?
No,
No?
it stops right here at the corner, the fence,
Okay.
then it picks up over here at the other corner of the tennis courts. So there will be fencing around the tennis courts, but that will be the
tennis courts.
10-foot black chain link. But no, it's not fence and fence.
Okay.
Are you wondering, Lisa, if that means, where are the entrance points for the tennis courts? And once the gates to the stadium field are closed, like are there separate entrances to the tennis court? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I was just
There
wondering
are.
how.
There are two entrances.
Okay,
One's within the fence, and one you can access outside of
that's
the
what I
fence.
think she was.
So you can come off Wyoming and walk in right here at the south end of the tennis courts and walk in Wyoming and Parkside Drive. But there is another access point inside the fence, which is right here.
What's that one right up above it?
Right here?
One, yeah, it's a little bit to the right. That looks like an entry.
These are maintenance gates.
Oh, okay.
We strategically put them in because of the trees, the acorns, the leaves. That way we literally can blow the leaves right straight through and out. They weren't there, they aren't there now. So this gives us a maintenance advantage.
And assuming that's all in line there, so what's the setback from the sidewalk?
On here, it's about 2 feet, 3 feet, yeah.
That's the same now. Right with the.
The fence actually sits farther back. Fence is
Oh, I
about
see, 'cause
6
it's
foot,
down there and then
6
goes
foot,
up.
yeah.
Okay.
Mike, we don't have any pictures of the actual tennis court. You know, where the tennis court fence is, there's gonna be a retaining wall.
I can find it.
But the retaining wall and the tennis court chain link meet. Am I correct there, or will there be
The fence goes right into the retaining.
right into the retaining wall? So
Correct.
there is no, and then the retaining wall to the sidewalk, their grade, it will be a straight grade.
Correct.
There's not gonna be any dips or.
Should eliminate much of that.
Right, so because right now there's kind of a low slope and a low grading, this should eliminate all of that, so it should just be grass, and then a retaining wall, and then the actual chain link of the fence and the tennis court going into that retaining wall.
The retaining wall actually goes right up against the curb.
Which will help the leaves, because that right now, that's where a lot of the leaves build up.
Yep.
So, moving forward, and, we wanted to talk a little bit about, paying,
Yeah.
paying for the tennis courts. So this is sort of our third item, but. We have the money already allocated to the tennis court project, so, you know, I've certainly been a little concerned with the budget and finances, and so I asked Mark to prepare this pros and cons of not doing it as opposed to doing it. You know, the dollars that we've already allocated for it can't really be used to offset any budget deficit. So it certainly can be used for other capital projects, but, you know, this made me feel a little bit more comfortable just with pros versus cons of doing the project, and I think pros outweigh the cons. And it's a lot of money, so, you know, I think this will be helpful for everyone.
We have B on here too.
Well, right, that, hopefully we can segue that into the next, from there, so.
On Sure. What we put together here is basically there's two projects that are kind of outstanding that we kind of need to start focusing on the direction we want to go in. We kind of made this decision-making analysis based upon those two projects. And the main focus also is not only the project, but the funding source and the estimated cost. So if you take a look at project one, which is on the left-hand side of the tennis court renovations, funding sources in 2015. So 2015 note was issued for the Hills project, the ASCO project that we did. This money was baked into that note and thoughts that we would be renovating tennis courts. So the estimated cost of the tennis courts right now for the 4 courts is $386,000. That money we already have, it's already there. It's sitting in a separate account. It's not included in the general fund. So that 386 cannot be used at all to balance our structural deficit that we have now of 1.2 million. It's just set aside. So if you go down below to where it says, if we do not replace the courts, let's kind of go through the pros and cons. The pros of not replacing the courts is that funding could be used for other projects. Meaning you could use it for project 2, which would be the maintenance building in the STEM center, or we could use it for future projects such as the renovation of the high school if we wanted to. And if we don't do it, obviously it looks like we're being conservative with our money and we're saving it for another project. A con, if we don't replace the courts, is the permits expire. So if we would go back to revisit this project, we would need to go back and reissue permits with the borough. So that's an additional cost there. The community perception, meaning if we delay this project or do not do it, it kind of looks like we are not going to replace the courts or resurface them. And then we would still owe money to turf tracking court for going through the RFP process already. So there would be expense that we already have laid out to that we would owe. If we scroll to the bottom, if we replace the courts, for the courts as we get new and expanded courts, great playing surface for our students and our community. If the area is updated, it's more appealing and it's usable. Right now it's not, it's shuttered. A con of that would be obviously increased maintenance and time for the ground crew to make sure the courts are clean and usable and get the weeds and all the acorns off the courts and keep it nice looking.
So part of this was to create a chart just for our decision making, so we could talk through this. It's not an exhaustive list, but these were the major pros and cons. We also thought it important to share with you the funding source as we're in the middle of a budget discussion right now, so that you see, especially when it comes to the tennis court, that this is money that has been set aside. It's not impacted, because like Mark said, we can't use that money to close our gap. So this is already been
Very interesting. Project 2, it's the maintenance in the STEM area. So the area we're talking about now is where the old wood shop used to be inside the junior, senior high school, and then the sheds that are kind of deplorable looking outside the facility area, and then there's actually an underground diesel tank, that is, oil tank, excuse me, that is, I think near the sheds.
They're under the sheds. Correct. No, they're closer to the parking lot and the dumpsters.
So there is an underground tank that we are talking about. So just to give you some perspective of the area we're speaking about, it's right there. The funding source for this would be capital reserve, if we would do both projects. Capital reserve, once again, once money is in the capital reserve account, we cannot move that money back over to the general fund to balance any budgets. Once it's there, it's there. And we have consciously put money into capital reserve for anticipation of certain projects. The estimated cost would be $150,000. That includes the tank remediation. Once again, we did not stick a shovel in the ground, so we do not know exactly what the cost is going to be once we start kind of tearing the area if we go forward with the project. But on the flip side of that, the tanks need to be remediated anyways because of an outstanding issue with code, I don't know say ordinance, but outstanding code issues. So we're going to have to remove those tanks anyway, and what we're hearing from the borough probably sooner than later.
Correct.
So
This was one of the outstanding permits that were tied into the project in 2012. These tanks were there at the time, and they should have been part of that project, but this way, this gives us some leeway to get around it. And like Mark said, until we put a shovel in the ground, we don't know what condition they're in.
We don't see the tanks, not bad.
There's a portion of oil left in one of the tanks.
Not much.
Not much. Most of it has been pumped, and oil is no longer
Unless there's some sort of,
Is the 150 for, so your maintenance sheds are, they're embarrassing actually, I can't actually believe it. Has that ever come up before this year? It just never worked out in the previous years. I mean, they look like they've been in bad shape for quite a long time.
Since I've been here, which I can only speak to, they're unusable. We
Yeah,
don't
they're-
even store materials in there anymore.
It's really, I'm sorry about that, that's pretty awful, but 150 is a conservative estimate of what this is costing just for your area, not the STEM classroom, right? We're just talking about the maintenance shed area 150.
What this does, so the positive consequence that comes out of a maintenance shed, because we're of the shed, is that right now, maintenance guys or technicians are using
Right,
the
so you
wood
open
shop.
up that.
So what it does, we really can't move forward with any plans for that area in the building until we get that, because regularly talked about, Mike and I talked about, those guys need a place to work outside of the, get out of the elements, they need electricity, they need the proper tools to do their job. So it was an opportunity, so these kind of go hand in hand. So the positive that comes out, we build this shed, we get one area, it's a shed maintenance area. So move them out, and then we can start moving towards STEM.
So the 150 is the maintenance area. The STEM is just tagged along so we know it affects the classroom. The classroom is not being, a budget for the classroom is not on this.
That,
Right, okay. That's what I was just, the 150, and that's, are you high-ending that 150 in case there are problems?
There's a contingency built into that.
Okay.
Yes. And that includes the tanks, removal of sheds, and the structure.
Okay. Thank you.
So, going back to the list on the right-hand side here, if we do not build the maintenance area / shed, once again, the funds can be repurposed, reused for any essential capital item that we have coming in the future. Once again, we're conservative with our approach as far as how we spend our money. Some of the cons would be is that area is one of the only usable areas left in the high school that is, once we move everything out, it's basically classroom ready, with maybe a small little tiny budget to make it look nice from when the maintenance guys were in there. But it is still classroom space. The underground tank needs to be removed, so we have to do it regardless, especially if we don't want to have any further issues with MSBA or the borough with that tank. The sheds, like Mike said, are basically unusable due to poor conditions, so they're just wasting away there anyways. And then the STEM program is forced to basically remain status quo in its current space. So we need that extra space to kind of expand that program and move forward. Then one other point that kind of gets lost in the shuffle is that although that maintenance area is fairly big, there are still other areas where they keep items because they don't have enough space. So putting them in their own little area gives them more space and it's more centralized, and they're not running all over the place finding their materials and items. Kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. If we would build a maintenance area, one pro would be, Mike would be very happy. STEM area is expanded into the current maintenance workshop. And just we can grow that curriculum, we can grow our students even further. Maintenance would have their own area centralized, and the tanks would be removed, and we would have all of our code issues cleaned up with the borough, which would also make Mike happy. Some of the cons, once again, is that capital reserve money, that you're taking money away from future projects that could be out there, such as when we go forward with the junior senior high building renovation. We gain more expense on STEM, which isn't necessarily a con, but is an expense that right now, based upon where our budget is, we would be looking forward to in probably later 16-17 or 17-18 budget. And then obviously we'd probably increase our cost of utilities a little further by adding an addition to the building, well actually a separate building. We'd be increasing our utility costs slightly, unless we get the air conditioning building or electricity. But just some thoughts there as part of potential additional costs that we don't have right now in our budget.
I feel like this maintenance area is a must do. Between the oil tanks and getting classroom space back, there's really no point in deferring this any longer. We've explored so many options for so long. We've been around this topic from every single angle for many months and falling back to this, so.
And you have pricing on, you have some pricing.
Those are pretty true numbers. I've worked with AEM Architects that helped us out in the hills a couple of years ago. He's ready to go. If you get the approval.
So he'll do the plans and then we'll send it out to bid.
Yep. And as of right now, if we get this moving sooner than later, there's a good chance we can have it done, substantially done before the start of school, and not have any issues with traffic flow back there with construction vehicles. At that point, we would just be finished.
I would like to see, yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you.
And it's a nice day.
Makes my day.
I guess while we're doing that, I didn't really finish with the field plans. If you guys like these new plans, we have our existing permit. I'd like to recommend that we have Mike go and try to get a new permit for these plans with the changes that we're making.
Excuse me, would you like me to set up a rendering to everybody building prior to next month? That way
Yes.
everybody can see it.
Yeah.
So really the options are the original plans or the changed plans from what we presented today. I prefer the plans from today. Anyone else's position is on that?
So I'll just interject because I'm concerned that this is the board's view of a compromise, but has a second meeting been held with the neighbors just to squelch any just concerns from their angle. I know we feel as a board maybe we're addressing everything, but this came off of one meeting that was, what I got from our one session was sort of an emotional kind of settling of a storm versus attacking specific specifics that evening with the neighbors, is my understanding. I might be wrong, but is this any different than that first meeting with the neighbors where the board presented what they were doing? And that was kind of it. I'm not looking maybe for discussion,
No.
just a concern that perceptions are really strong in the community, and optics are obviously important when you're tackling big projects. And I would hate for this to look like, once again, we're coming at people with our version, assuming it's a compromise or even an attempt at a compromise where it might not be viewed at that because only one conversation was had. Just saying, our ad hoc, I bring it up again, and I don't want to be scoffing or anything when I say it, but we've tried to meet with West Reading people now over an issue once a month. We're having another one, we had an evening meeting, we listened to concerns, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not looking for town hall meetings by any stretch, but perception that one issue maybe gets more feedback versus others not getting as much. Just going forward, I think that is something in the past that the community, at least that reaches out to me on a daily basis, is that decisions get made in vacuums. And I think that's important going forward, that we are as transparent and open as possible.
I'll say from my opinion on this is, at the end of the day, it's events, and I understand the emotional aspect that you and the neighbors have to it, but in meeting for hours and hours and hours on how we can make this fence the best, and still retain the reasons why we're building it. This is the plan. So, as far as me personally, there's just not much else we can do, short of not building it. So, while it doesn't seem like a major compromise, I think you also lose sight of their tennis courts now. They're 1 or 2.5 years ago. That's a big deal. So, and
May I pipe in on that one? So, you talk about neighborhood perception. 3 years ago, there were no tennis courts. The board said, we don't need tennis courts. A year later, a board member was quoted saying, we can't live without the tennis courts. Thank God the neighbors did save them, because she said that. She said the curriculum needs tennis courts. Then we were going to resurface the tennis courts. Another board member said, we only need so much money to resurface the tennis courts. The borough offered money to help with that resurfacing. Then we're taking all the tennis courts down and rebuilding them because we can't. Please do not say no. I'm talking about what the perception. Stop. The perception.
I'm not reacting to anything that
The
you're saying.
perception in the public. It was up there on the PowerPoint.
But I'm not-
The perception in the public is this. Do you want to know what the perception is?
Excuse me, just one
So-
second. Excuse
so
me,
that-
just
let
one
me
second,
finish,
Mrs. Schroeder.
please.
I want you to understand that I was not
Let me
reacting to
finish.
anything that you were saying. So
This is
I
why
apologize.
this is why the perception is what
I
it is
apologize
because
if
of
you
that.
feel that way, but I wasn't reacting to anything you were saying.
Well, then don't react. So the perception is that then the tennis courts were coming down, then they were being resurfaced, now they're being rebuilt. The public doesn't know what you're doing in here. Now I'm looking at this PowerPoint that you guys have major needs going on here, and a STEM program could be built. And after all, this is supposed to be all about the students and the education. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we've been focusing on a fence that's just a fence. After all, it's just a fence. And this stuff has been going on, and now we're going to spend all this money on a tennis court, which I support, but at the same time, I am shocked at what I just saw in this PowerPoint here. I can't even believe. What?
What are you shocked about?
That we are even discussing that this maintenance stuff hasn't been a priority all these years, and the fence has been. And we could be improving our STEM programs, and we're talking about just a fence all these years. And now the perception in the community is the tennis courts, we didn't want them, then we did want them, then we were resurfacing them, then we were rebuilding them, and
Karen, a lot of that stuff stems from, you know, we get rid of them, people want them, we change, we do that. So you're saying that that's negative. I mean, that's a reaction to
What I'm
community. Hang on, let me finish.
Mhm.
And then secondly, then when you start to delve deeper into, okay, we're gonna keep the courts, then we have an actual land study done. It's not as simple as it seems. That's life. I mean, you build houses, you've
Oh, I
done
know.
stuff. So that, you know, if I could control that, I would have, but you can't. I mean, so then you have to make an even tougher decision and say, are we gonna spend this much money, or are we just not gonna do it? So, you know, I think when you're saying these are negative perceptions, I think they're actually positive. I mean, because we should have said, let's scrap it, it's 400 grand. I mean, you know, I think that's a ton of money.
I think the public doesn't understand why at one point we were resurfacing and that was okay, and now we're spending 400,000. You guys know what your inner circle is talking about. The outside world doesn't, okay? So I'm just saying that the word perception here comes into play because the outside world doesn't know how this happened. We didn't need those tennis courts a few years ago.
If I could say something, I think what happened was that when we got into this a little bit deeper, and I think this was discussed in committees,
It's all discussed.
but when we got into this deeper, we realized that resurfacing wasn't gonna work because of the subsurface area was in such disrepair that we had to do more work to make the tennis courts usable for the long term. The resurfacing would have just been a temporary fix. In 5, 10 years, we would have been back. Am I
It
right?
was the drainage infrastructure, it was
Right.
the retaining wall on the stadium side that was starting.
And we didn't know that
fail.
until we got into it a little bit and had somebody come out and look at it and say, hey, guys, you have more of a problem here than you thought you had. So I think some of that stuff evolves over time as you investigate something, you see different things, you just make different decisions. But I can tell you from my involvement, all of those issues were discussed at a committee meeting. Now, you know, to some extent, we can't help whether people are here or are not here, but those issues were discussed at a committee meeting. So
I understand that. What I'm telling you is that the perception of the public doesn't understand all that. So all I'm saying is that the PRing on this hasn't been so great. How could you have changed that? I don't know. But you have to understand, a few years ago, you guys were getting rid of those tennis courts altogether. And a lot of people stepped in and said, we want to save the tennis courts. So
But isn't that a good thing? that we
it is a
listen to
good
the
thing. I'm
people?
saying that, but I'm also saying then that, you know, this whole thing with the maintenance and the STEM thing, a lot of people don't even know that this is going on, that this is a huge decision.
We've been talking about it for a long time, and it is a huge decision, and that's why it has taken a long time. It has not been second fiddle to the fence. STEM has not been second fiddle to the fence. These are issues that we talk about at just about every facilities meeting. We do not talk about the fence at every facilities meeting. It comes up when it comes up every few months, but we have been investigating the maintenance shed and where to put it and where not to put it and implications. And there's just a lot of moving parts with all of these projects.
And I'll interject quickly on that also, and I didn't know this until I got on the board, is the length of time that it takes for any of these decisions to be made, and I'm sure you guys are seeing that now, is ridiculous. I mean, just in terms of like meetings and when you can vote and when you can talk about and when you can recommend, it seems like forever. And I agree with you there. I mean, it just does, and unfortunately, you know, we haven't, so in order to get to where we are right now with the maintenance buildings, we have researched prefab spaces. We have looked at every square inch in this school to see if we can find someplace else. We've explored the field house behind the superintendent's office and looked at studies. Mike has spent hours and hours. So, you know, and then we have to discuss it at committee, and then, you know, then we say, let's do another, let's see, you know, where we can save money. And so it takes, and I agree with you, it seems like such a long waste of time, but it takes months to arrive to, I mean, not years probably, but months and months to arrive to these decisions. So, and that should show that none of them are taken lightly. So we really do try to explore every option that we can.
Well, I agree with you on all that, but had we had a meeting like this where I saw the plans, and maybe I missed a committee meeting along the way, I have to admit, I work a full-time job, I had to take off today for this. So, so that I could, in a mature way, express my concerns about the safety of that corner, then maybe we would have, these past few years wouldn't have happened, and this would have moved along a lot further. That said, I think why I'm a little fired up right now is because of your remark that says it's just a fence.
Well, but
There,
I mean, in
this
terms
is
of
not just a
building,
fence,
I'm
this
not
could be a
talking-
bell tower, this is
But-
about your relationship with the neighbors, so you just is regarding another meeting. The neighbors are sitting and waiting to be called for that second meeting.
I did reach out, Karen, and I'll also tell you, you know, I'm spending hours and I work full-time, you know, so it's, we were pushed off on the last one for several weeks. So, you know,
Well,
we have a permit that has a deadline. So, you know, I said this in our first meeting, we have a permit that has a deadline. I would prefer this permit, but I mean, because I just think it's cleaner, but, you know, you can't, and really, I also sometimes think that the perception of this whole thing is worse than the